Gaza crisis deepens. Starvation, aid deaths, burial shroud shortage. In the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza, a shocking reality unfolds. More lives are lost to starvation in the pursuit of aid than from direct conflict. Amidst this turmoil, burial shrouds have become scarce, a grim symbol of the rising death toll. On August 4, 2025, it was reported that at least 40 Palestinians fell victim to Israeli gunfire and airstrikes in various areas of Gaza. Disturbingly, among the deceased were 10 individuals who were simply trying to access aid, according to health officials. Additional reports indicated that 5 more succumbed to starvation, intensifying fears of an impending famine. These tragic events unfolded during 2 separate incidents near aid distribution centers managed by the U.S.-supported Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF, located in central and southern Gaza. UN figures highlight the extreme dangers faced by those seeking assistance, revealing that over 1,000 individuals have been killed while attempting to receive aid since the GHF began its operations in May 2025. Many of these fatalities have been attributed to Israeli forces positioned in close proximity to these aid sites. Amidst this chaos, Bilal Fari, a 40-year-old man, shared his harrowing experience at Gaza City's Al-Shifa hospital, where mourners gathered to collect the bodies of those killed the previous day while seeking help. Fari poignantly said, "Every time someone goes to those centers, they either come back with provisions or are carried back to the hospital as a martyr, or injured. No one returns unharmed." In another tragic scenario, at least 13 Palestinians lost their lives on the preceding day while waiting for UN aid trucks at the Zikam crossing into northern Gaza. Due to ongoing Israeli border restrictions and the overwhelming number of deaths, mourners were forced to wrap some bodies in patterned blankets instead of traditional white shrouds, which hold profound significance in Islamic customs. One weary resident, Thari, expressed a desperate longing for peace, stating, "Ye don't want war. We yearn for peace. This misery must end. We're all suffering. We have nothing that allows us to lead a normal life like others do." Life here is a constant struggle. The situation prompted no immediate response from Israeli officials regarding the tragic incidents on Sunday. The Israeli military claimed they had not engaged in fire near the aid centers on that day, failing to provide further clarification. Israel attributes the humanitarian plight in Gaza to Hamas and contends it is making strides to facilitate aid delivery to the population. This includes declaring temporary pauses in combat in certain regions, conducting food airdrops, and establishing secure routes for humanitarian convoys. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced plans to convene his security cabinet to discuss strategies on military operations in Gaza aimed at addressing the government's objectives, including the defeat of Hamas and the release of hostages. Furthermore, Gaza's health ministry reported that, tragically, 5 additional individuals died due to malnutrition over the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of hunger-related deaths to 180, with 93 being children, since the conflict reignited. United Nations agencies have underscored that the limited food airdrops are inadequate and have urged Israel to permit more aid deliveries by land and to swiftly improve accessibility. The Israeli military agency responsible for coordinating aid claims over 23,000 tons of humanitarian supplies have entered Gaza through 1,200 trucks in the past week. Yet, many of these have yet to reach distribution centers managed by the UN and other organizations. The Israeli army later reported that approximately 120 aid packages containing food were airdropped into Gaza through collaboration with several nations. However, the Hamas-run Gaza government asserted that over 600 aid trucks had arrived since the easing of restrictions in late July. Yet, local witnesses and Hamas sources indicated that many of these trucks were looted due to desperation among widespread displaced populations and armed groups. Palestinian officials, along with representatives from the UN, have declared that Gaza requires an influx of around 600 aid trucks daily to meet the basic humanitarian needs, a figure that reflects the amounts allowed prior to the onset of the conflict. The current hostilities began when Hamas attacked southern Israel on October 7, 2023, resulting in the deaths of 1,200 individuals and the abduction of 251 hostages, according to Israeli reports. Since then, more than 60,000 Palestinians have reportedly died amid the clashes, a figure that Gaza health officials do not differentiate between combatants and non-combatants. Israeli officials state that 50 hostages remain in Gaza, with only 20 believed to be alive. The above report, integrating deeply tragic moments, highlights the severe humanitarian crisis faced by Gaza. It raises pertinent questions. How can the international community better respond to this urgent need? What role should awareness and dialogue play in addressing the ongoing conflict? Feel free to share your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree. Your perspective matters in this complex situation. Why airdrops aren't the answer for Gaza aid? A former USAID official explains. When it comes to addressing humanitarian crises, few methods are as flawed and ineffective as airdropping supplies into conflict zones. This is especially true in the case of Gaza, where recent efforts to deliver aid from the sky have raised serious concerns. As someone who once led the Office of U.S. Foreign Disaster Assistance, I've witnessed firsthand how such operations often fall short, and why they can do more harm than good. The July 27th article in Frayed Gaza Aid Airdrops Take Hold highlights just how problematic this approach can be. But here's where it gets controversial. What if these well-intentioned gestures aren't just inefficient, but actively counterproductive? Let's break it down. Dropping pallets of food or supplies from planes might sound like a quick fix, but in practice, it's one of the least equitable ways to distribute resources. In war-torn regions, those who benefit most are typically young, strong, fast-moving individuals, or worse, heavily armed groups. Without trained relief workers on the ground to ensure fair distribution, vulnerable populations, children, the elderly, hospitals, and schools are left behind. Instead of alleviating suffering, this method often exacerbates it by allowing critical supplies to end up in the wrong hands. And this is the part most people miss. Airdrops don't just fail to help, they may actually strengthen militant groups by diverting aid away from legitimate channels. A major study I co-authored at the Institute for Defense Analyses underscores another ironic twist. While airdrops are wildly expensive and inefficient, their very impracticality might serve a purpose, prompting nations to restart stalled ground-based delivery systems. Could the grotesque costs of air operations finally push governments to find better solutions? It's an idea worth considering, but only if we're willing to confront the deeper issues at play. Now let's shift gears to diplomacy and international relations. Imagine a world leader declaring support for recognizing a Palestinian state without addressing Israel's security concerns, or acknowledging the presence of terrorist organizations embedded within civilian populations. That's exactly what Britain's Labour Party leader Keir Starmer recently proposed, according to a July 30th report. His stance sends a troubling message that violence and stubbornness can win rewards on the global stage. Is this really the kind of precedent we want to set? Starmer's proposal raises important questions about accountability and legitimacy. For instance, what kind of Palestinian state would Britain recognize? Would it align with democratic principles? Or would it empower entities like Hamas, which continues to hold hostages and rearm with Iran's backing? These are not hypotheticals. They're realities that demand careful consideration. By ignoring these complexities, Starmer risks undermining decades of diplomatic consensus that any resolution must come through negotiation, not unilateral action. On a different note, debates over education policy reveal equally pressing challenges. Take the so-called reading crisis in America, which Paul Thomas dismissed in his July 30th commentary. He argues that there's no real problem, suggesting instead that the standards used to measure literacy are simply too high. But is lowering expectations truly the answer? As someone involved in setting those benchmarks back in the 1990s, I know they were designed to reflect ambitious goals, not minimal passing grades. Calling them unrealistic doesn't solve anything. It merely shifts the focus away from the real issue. Consider this. If only 33% of fourth graders and 31% of eighth graders meet proficiency standards today, isn't that cause for alarm? These numbers indicate a systemic failure, one that disproportionately affects marginalized communities. Rather than debating whether the bar is too high, shouldn't we focus on ensuring every child has access to rigorous, evidence-based instruction? After all, literacy, they rob us of opportunities to learn from our mistakes and build a better future. So as we grapple with these issues, let's ask ourselves, are we ready to face hard truths, or will we choose comfort over clarity? Your thoughts?